What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down how you can catch with shoulder pads on and how you can get more comfortable making the transition into playing with full pads on this time of year. Let's get started. Now, before we get into this video, fellas, we are going to be traveling out to 15 more states across the U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So check out that very first link in the description below. If you guys are local to San Francisco, California, then we're going to be coming out to Miami, Florida, Las Vegas, Nevada, Portland, Oregon, Charlotte, North Carolina, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, Illinois, Buffalo, New York. Then we'll be heading out to Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, Texas. Then we'll be coming out to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan. Then we'll be heading out to Boise, Idaho, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys are local to any one of those cities and would like to train with us, again, how you can sign up, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out there. We'd love to meet you guys. So again, very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. All right, fellas, so how this video is going to go is I'm going to break down some of the best practices that wide receivers and honestly any position can use to get comfortable catching in pads. I'm going to talk about some adjustments that you can make to your pads that will make it easier. And then towards the end of the video, I'm going to break down some of the best brands of pads that you should be buying as a receiver. So first things first, when it comes down to wearing the shoulder pads, you got to get reps in it. You have to get reps beforehand. I think that's one of the most important things that you can do as a receiver is when June rolls around, July, especially August, anything that you do that is even remotely close to being football related, working out, running, whatever, wear the shoulder pads to get comfortable moving around in the pads because we just honestly have to get comfortable. Now, I also recommend don't wear the pads like how I'm wearing them right now. Let's wear a practice jersey over the top or maybe a tighter jersey, tighter fit jersey, maybe an old jersey that you have, just to get used to that feeling of the jersey weighing you down while you have these pads on, because that's what you're ultimately going to be playing in, so that's what you want to get comfortable with. Don't just wear the pads. This is better than nothing, but I would recommend putting a jersey on over this. But you need reps to get comfortable catching and to get comfortable with the mobility that you have. Now, when it comes to making adjustments with the pads, there are two things that I recommend. So the first one is not really an adjustment. This is more so a good gauge to see if you have a good pair of shoulder pads, right? So if the school gives you pads, if you're trying on pads at the store, if you bought your own, the gauge that I like to see with wide receivers is you should be able to touch your hands over the top of your head easily. Like no problem, touch your hands over the top of your head to test mobility. Because the toughest part for receivers is not the ball that's thrown right in front of their face. That's easy money. It's the tough ones where they got to reach, they got to extend, and they feel like the pads are restricting them. So if you can touch your hands over the top of your head, and I'm going to give you some brands that you will be able to do that towards the end, like I said, but that is a good gauge and test of mobility to make sure you have the right pads. Because honestly, you guys, like, at school, they don't care. Like, they're just going to be handing out pads, especially if you're at a program that maybe isn't as heavily funded as others. They're not going to have these top-of-the-line pads that they're giving out to everybody. They're not going to test to see, oh, does this fit him? Is he a receiver? They're just going to be handing them out more often than not, right? So you might get stuck with some lineman pads. And if you're competing for a job, that's really honestly something that could hold you back a little bit. Like, I remember in high school when I was playing quarterback, they tried to give me lineman pads, and I threw like a fit, and I hate being that guy, but I threw a fit. I'm not wearing these because I'm competing for a job. It's going to mess up my throwing. I need to get the right pair of pads that fit me. So I ended up buying my own, and that was the best thing that I ever did. So I recommend that. Now, pads these days, very, very expensive, and I understand that. And I'm going to give you some recommendations that might be a little bit on the pricier side. Hey, honestly, like, save your money. I recommend you saving up to buy a pair of shoulder pads that is going to be long lasting, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. But I highly recommend getting pads that fit. Now, another thing, an adjustment you can make to the pads. There's a pad right here called the deltoid pad. You see on my pads, there's no padding right here. On a lot of brands of pads, there's an extra piece of padding right here. Usually it's Velcro, usually it's attached to the pad. I suggest removing that deltoid pad. Now, some people might not think that that is a big difference, but that gives you so much more mobility. You're able to reach, you're able to come across your body. And again, some people might say, oh, that's not safe. Whatever, if you don't want to remove it and you don't feel confident, fine, don't do it. It's not like you have to do it, but I recommend it to give yourself more mobility. Now, if it's not Velcro, you could cut it off with scissors or you could tuck it in underneath. I didn't like tucking it in when I had a pair like that. I recommend cutting it off or peeling the Velcro off so you have more range of motion, and that's probably the best adjustment you can make to these shoulder pads. All right, guys, now there's 3 brands of pads that I recommend that are very, very popular, maybe a little bit on the pricey side, a couple of them, but these are the ones that I recommend best for receivers. So number 1 is going to be X-Tech. So the X-Tech pad's very popular. A lot of NFL guys use the X-Tech pads. I think they're more popular in like kind of the quarterback community, if I'm not mistaken. But quarterbacks and receivers kind of have the same deal with shoulder pads. You want mobility, you want complete range of motion, you want something to feel light. So I suggest X-Tech. Now, those are on the pricier side of things, but I think it's well worth it because I think those pads are going to be long lasting, especially with the time and effort that they put into getting you the right fit, the right size for the pads, etc. So that's a brand that I recommend. I wish I had a promo code to give you or something like that to help you out with the price, but I unfortunately don't. Now, another brand that I recommend, and this one I saw a receiver wear that I personally train, and I didn't even think he was wearing shoulder pads. I thought he was just wearing a practice jersey. It's the 2-in-1 pads, I believe is what they're called. Now, those are also on a little bit of the pricier side, but pretty much what it is instead of wearing a shoulder pad thing like this, like the actual pads, you put on like a vest, and then you put on like this part of the pad, you know, like this like plastic part right here, you put like a carbon fiber plate that simulates the shell of the pad over the vest. And honestly, when you put the practice jersey on, it looks like you're not even wearing pads. Now, it almost seems not safe. Like, it almost seems like if you get popped, you're gonna like break into two. But it actually is like super high rated, super safe, plenty of padding. My guy's taken hits in it before, and he says he doesn't feel a dang thing. So those are ones that I recommend if you have the financial means to purchase something like that. Now, a little bit on the cheaper side. The pads that I'm wearing, by the way, these are Rawlings Spartan SRG pads for QBs and wide receivers. I don't even know if they make these anymore, but if they do, I recommend these because these were not that expensive. If you could find a pair of these on like eBay or something, it is definitely worth, if it's a little bit more expensive but cheaper than the X-Tech or the 2-in-1 pads, I recommend these. I just don't know if they make them anymore, but if you want to search them up, they're Rawlings SRG pads. Okay, now another brand that's maybe a little bit cheaper than X-Tech and a little bit cheaper than 2-in-1 would be Zenith. I've seen a lot of my guys, especially the younger guys that I train, wear Zenith pads, and I forget the name of it. It's like Pro 2 or something like that, like version 2, something of that nature. Those are really good. Tons of range of motion. They look a lot like the 2-in-1 pads when you put the jersey on. Doesn't even look like you're wearing shoulder pads, and obviously that's what we want as a receiver and as a quarterback. So those are the top brands that I would recommend. On the cheaper side of things, I would have to do some more research for those ones, but I think it's well worth it, especially if you plan on keeping the pads throughout your career. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like to train with us in 15 different states this off season, check out that very first link in the description below. We're going all the way to San Francisco, California, to Buffalo, New York, Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, all over the country, you guys. So if we're coming to a city near you, check out that very first link in the description below where you could sign up. We'd love to meet you and love to work with you. I'll see you guys next time.